Oh, you guys must have went to a place that doesn't see that. Well, but if you can't do it from her.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, the live stream is going and ready to begin.
Okay, good evening. Let's call to order the special council meeting of August 22nd, 2022. Before we get started, I'd like to remind participants of some procedural items for this meeting. During the meeting, participants will remain muted when not speaking. If participants have a question or a comment, please use the raised hand feature and speakers will be called upon to speak one at a time. A random order voice vote will be administered by the city clerk for each vote. This city council meeting is being conducted utilizing teleconferencing and electronic means as allowed by Government Code Subdivision 54953E and Resolution number 1089-21, reaffirmed by the Sunnyvale City Council on August 9th, 2022. Members of the public may provide audio public comment by connecting to the teleconference meeting online or by telephone and use the raised hand feature request to speak, star 9 on your telephone. Teleconference meeting details are available on the council agenda. Captions are available to viewers accessing this meeting via Zoom. Captions can be displayed or hidden using the live transcript button. Comments on agenda items must be submitted prior to the time I close the public hearing on that agenda item. Speakers are requested to keep their comments to no more than 3 minutes, and time limits will be strictly enforced. Guidelines are posted on the city's website and on our council meeting agenda. First up is roll call. City Clerk, may we please have a roll call?
Mayor Klein,
Present.
Vice Mayor Cisneros,
Present.
Councilmember Larson,
Present.
Councilmember Hendricks,
Pending.
Councilmember Melton,
Present.
Councilmember Dean,
Present.
Councilmember Spitaleri.
Present.
7 present participating via teleconference.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and move to our general business. We have one item this evening. It's item 22-0859. Adopt a resolution appointing Linda Sell to the City Council to represent Council District 1 for a full term of 4 years beginning in 2023 in lieu of an election and canceling the November 8th, 2022 election for District 1 pursuant to California Election Code Section 1022-9. Is there a staff report?
Yes, Mayor and Council members, David Carnahan, the City Clerk. So we're here tonight. Back in June, on the 7th, Council adopted a resolution calling for the election for Districts 1, 3, and 5. At the close of the nomination period for each of those elections on August 12th, Linda Sell was the only candidate nominated for District 1. And then there's a California Elections Code provision, as you noted, 10229. In this scenario, Council has 2 options that they can consider. One would be appointing the person, Linda Sell, to District 1 and then canceling the election. Council also has the opportunity to just go ahead with the election and we would move forward as similar to District 3 and 5. Some things to consider. Those are the options Council has. One thing to keep in mind for Sunnyvale is the Council seniority process, where Council seniority for selecting seats, as well as how you're listed on letterhead and a few other administrative matters, goes Mayor, Vice Mayor, followed by Council members with the longest terms of service. And where there's a tie-in length of service, then the ties are broken by the number of votes cast. And so, if you make an appointment for someone, they end up with 0 votes. So if there's a tie in length of service, which would likely occur with a council member elected to District 3 and a council member elected to District 5, that's how I would anticipate the council seniority would fall out. If council does choose to adopt the resolution included in the staff report, the city would save about $3,000 because they would not be subsidizing Linda Sell's candidate statement in the voter information guide. She did submit sufficient signatures under the provisions of Municipal Code Section 2.28.030 that the city would cover that cost. And then the Registrar of Voters estimates it would cost almost $17,000 for the conducting of the election. So combined, it would be close to $20,000 in savings if council does choose to cancel the election. So you see before you a couple alternatives. Alternative 1 would appoint Linda Sell to the City Council. If appointed, she would assume office at your meeting January 3rd, as if she had been elected during the November election. And you would also cancel the November 8th, 2022 election just for District 1 And one other note is that if the election is canceled, that would also cancel the opportunity for a write-in candidate for District 1. Any of the actions on this agenda item tonight only apply to District 1 and have no impact on the elections for Districts 3 and 5. And that concludes the staff report, and I'm ready for questions from council and comments.
Thank you very much. Are there questions of staff? Councilmember Hendricks.
Yeah, thank you. So I might have other questions after the public speaks, but I did have a couple of members of the public reach out to me and ask me the question of what would happen if no one had applied? That's not the scenario here, but they're just wondering.
So the same elections code provision has a third option for that type of a scenario where you have fewer candidates than offices open, and council would have the opportunity to consider making an appointment of an eligible elector from the district, so someone who's registered to vote in District 1.
Okay. And then you use the word appointment. Is that really the correct term? Are we appointing someone to this seat, or based on the state election code, are we just saying here the election's done? Is appointment the correct term?
Yes, in this scenario, the appointment is the correct term because you would be making the appointment in lieu of conducting the election because there are not more candidates than available seats.
But it's appointment in lieu of. It's a little bit different than the appointment we made for like Tony to fill the seat.
Correct. It's a little bit different in that the voters of the district did support this candidate, so they are qualified for the ballot as opposed to a process that's separate from an election.
Okay. And then just on the council seniority thing, which is really an inside baseball thing, it really has to do with seating assignments, the list of the council on city documents, and the order, like we get called and you do roll call. Is there anything that's different about a council member and how their votes count based on the seniority order? I'm assuming the answer is no.
Correct. The answer is no. All 7 council members' votes count equally for every vote that you take.
Yeah, because no resident has ever come up to me and said, "Oh, you're seniority number X, so you do or don't mean something." And then, as it relates to people have been asking questions about write-ins. I sorry I didn't send this question to you before, but do you have any statistics on, like, has anyone ever been written in that generated more than 1% of a city council vote?
So I don't have any statistics on that. My guess is over the course of history, someone has likely gotten more than 1% of the vote as a write-in candidate, but I don't know for sure. And I'm not familiar if there have been a write-in candidate that was elected when there were others on the ballot.
Yeah, I don't think anybody has from write-ins, and I'd be surprised if it ever got to 1%. Okay, I have the other comments for later, but thanks a lot, Dave.
Thank you. Next up is Councilmember Dean.
Thank you. Councilmember Hendricks asked one of the 2 questions I had. The only other question I have is, and even though it's not that big of an amount, I'm just curious about it. Where does the money that we pay to the registrar come from in terms of our accounting? Is it just from the general fund? Is there anything more specific? What does that look like on paper?
So we do have a project that's funded every other year for elections, and that does come with funding from the general fund. So it's money that's put in the project so that it covers typically the cost estimated for whichever districts and or mayor are on the ballot, as well as we include potential costs for up to 2 ballot measures, so that if those are added in, we aren't trying to scramble for the money to conduct that election. But yeah, it's general fund money that would just not be spent, not charged against the project.
Okay, wonderful. Those are all my questions. Thank you. And I will say on this one, I'm very curious to hear the public comment, but I'll save my comments for after as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Vice Mayor Cisneros.
Yes, thank you. I believe I know the answer to this question, but I just wanted to check and make sure. Was there anyone for District 1 who had expressed interest or, started the process to run, but didn't meet the qualifications in some way?
So there were no other individuals that pulled nomination papers. We do get, a smattering over the years of folks interested in various districts, but Linda Sell was the only individual that came in and pulled papers to run for that office.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's all the questions I have for now.
Okay, thank you. Next up is Councilmember Larson.
Thank you, Mayor. I've got a couple questions. One is just another little nuance on what it means to be appointed in this case. Appointed but treated as though elected, if I understand the state law correctly. And when someone is running for re-election, I believe that if they were appointed to their position, they're not listed as incumbent, they're listed as an appointed incumbent. I'm wondering what would happen if we do appoint Linda Sell to this position 4 years from now, if she decides to run again. Does she show up on the ballot as an incumbent or as an appointed incumbent?
I believe she would show up as an appointed incumbent,
Okay.
but I will research that while we can
Yeah,
continue.
it's not critical to my thinking tonight, but it's just something I see potentially down the road. And then the other question, and this is for the city attorney. So I understand that so if we have an election, and then once it's clear who the winner of the election is, then the Brown Act begins to apply to them, for example, for purposes of a quorum, that we can't have more than a quorum of council members or quorum or more of council members discussing a topic. So I'm wondering, if we appoint Linda Sell tonight, does she now fall into that bucket? And council members then have to be careful about how many of us discuss city issues with her.
Yes, she would. If she is appointed by the council, she would be treated as any candidate who was elected by the voters. She has all the obligations under the Brown Act or any other law. And if the council chooses to appoint her, we would provide an orientation, as we do to all council member elects, to talk about their responsibility and the time period from being certified and assuming office. Well, and of course, in this case, rather than 5 or 6 weeks, we're talking many months. And so she will have a slightly different burden in terms of being cautious, but it is the same burden.
Yeah, and also the council members, we also share in that with her, that we need to be thoughtful if we discuss an issue with her.
Absolutely. It
Okay.
works both ways.
Those are all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Hendricks.
Yeah, thanks. So, Gustav, that was pretty good thinking right there. I want to double check also, if we appoint in lieu Linda Sell, does this term apply to her term limit structure as it relates to appointment to the council?
I can take that one. Yes, it would, because she
Okay.
would serve 4 years on the city council, so it would be longer than two years, so it would count as a full term.
Okay, so we're not moving around the whole term limit structures that we have in place.
No, the construct of the statute is essentially, since there is no election, there has to be a formal mechanism in which she is put into office. And since there's no election, the only body that could put her into office is the city council itself.
Okay, and then just to be clear, either for city clerk or city attorney, the statute that we're doing, that we might do this under, is state law. This is not something where here the city council's just gotten together and we decided we want to do something to manipulate the system.
That is correct. And there are at least, I think we found at least one city elsewhere, David may remember the name of the city, that's also doing it this election cycle. And there are other cities that have done it both at large seats as well as district seats. It's simply a factor of whether or not there's only one candidate that submits nomination papers that satisfy all the requirements to be placed on the ballot. Then the option falls to the council of how to proceed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Councilmember Spitaleri.
A question I have for John or City Clerk. When will Linda be sworn in?
So if council were to choose to adopt the resolution appointing her and canceling the election, she would be sworn in on January 3rd, at the same time and the same meeting as the individuals elected for districts 3 and 5.
Well, my question is, given the fact that she will not be sworn into January, why would the Brown Act or any other regulations apply to it?
Well, it follows the same provision under the Brown Act that says once you are certified. So remember, in an election, 3 weeks or so after the election is held, the registrar of voters certifies the election and submits it to the city's election official, the city clerk. The city clerk then turns that around and takes that result to the city council, who then certifies the election, saying person A is now elected to district seat or district 1. At that point, all the decision of who's going to fill the office in January is settled. No one else can take that office. And so once they're the council member elect, whether it's through an election or through appointment, all the duties and responsibilities of being a council member elect falls on that person.
And just a follow-up question. So the certification then would happen sometime after, if it's approved tonight, the appointment.
Well, so the certification of the election for whichever districts remain on the ballot would take place on January 3rd. That's a charter requirement that some cities, the general law cities, it's the next regular meeting after the city clerk receives the election results. But Sunnyvale's charter states that council seats their new council members at their first regular
I
meeting.
understand that. That was not my question. My question is, will she be certified if she's appointed tonight, or will that certification take place in January?
It will take place in January because she'll be installed as if she was elected.
So then my question goes back to you, John. If she's not going to be certified to January, why would any of the provisions of the Brown Act anyway apply to it?
It's simply because it's a different mechanism that's appointing her, but the rule is applied the same way. She will be a council member elect, and she could be engaged in conversations with other council members about matters that would come up after she assumes office, and therefore there could be a Brown Act violation.
Okay. Thank you. I just want a lot of clarification. Thank you very much, both of you.
Thank you very much. City Clerk?
Yeah, just before you move on, I wanted to just clarify in relation to Councilmember Larson's comment about the ballot designation of appointed incumbent. If Linda Sella is appointed tonight, she could use the term incumbent because Elections Code Section 13107A4 that pertains to appointed incumbent specifically exempts someone appointed through this process under Elections Code Section 10229 from that restriction. So she'd be able to either use the full title of the elected office or the term incumbent, and would not be obligated to use the term appointed in conjunction with that.
Thank you, David. Thanks for your quick research on that. And as far as, and we've talked in the past about kind of reevaluating strategy once we have 6 district council members, and basically looking at strategically how this applies to seniority as well as other things, because as opposed to at large, there are multiple things. From a seniority standpoint, this is very limited, and conceivably we could undertake this when we have 6 council members to relook at seniority. That is correct, David, or
yes, the seniority sits inside a council policy, so council at its discretion and desire could update that policy.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you. And thank you, Councilmember Larson, for bringing up the questions, the Brown Act. That was one of my first questions to the city attorney and trying to figure out the right things to do, but I appreciate that. I see no other questions from council, so I will go ahead and open the public hearing on this item. Since we remain in a virtual setting, I'll ask the public to use the virtual raised hand button or dial *9 on your telephone to indicate that they wish to speak. The city clerk will then ask you to unmute your microphone when it's your turn to address city council. City clerk, do we have any members of the public wishing to speak on this item?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. First up is Julia Liu, followed by Stephen Meyer. Julia, you've been unmuted and you have 3 minutes to address the city.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. We live in District 1, and speaking for the 4 voters in my household, we support the council appointing Linda Sell rather than going through a meaningless process and waste $20,000. That money could be used for many other things that the city needs to do, including hire more city staff. So yes, I definitely, all of us support that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Stephen Meyer, followed by Linda Sell. Stephen, you've been unmuted and you have 3 minutes to address the city council.
Hello, good evening, Mayor and City Council. Happy back to school. So I live in District 1. I'm in the Fairbury neighborhood, and that they got this onto your calendar. And since this is the only candidate, it's the right thing to do. The cost savings can be to excellent programs. Like last meeting, all of you approved extending scholarships for activities, and you can just imagine the number of activities that can be funded with this money. So it makes absolute common sense, and really enthusiastic that we have a great to represent this school. And thank you.
Thank you, Stephen.
Next up is Mike Cerrone, followed by Charlene Liu. Mike, you've been unmuted and you have 3 minutes to address the city council.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. Mike Cerrone speaking on my own behalf. I urge the council to vote for this resolution. I have known Linda for a number of years. She is an extraordinarily qualified candidate for City Council, having contributed in many areas over many years, supporting the schools, environmental issues, and she's currently Vice Chair of the Sunnyvale Housing and Human Services Commission. So she's very well qualified. She is, I think the fact that she's the only candidate is partly a result of her high level of qualifications that discouraged other candidates from being from entering the race. So I hope you will appoint her tonight. It's well deserved. The outcome of the election is not in doubt. So as Julia Liu pointed out, the money could be well spent on other things. And kind of a side issue is that on ballots, particularly this kind of a November ballot, the down ballot or more local candidates and measures a lot of times get neglected. So it to the extent that we can reduce the number of choices there without interfering with the democratic process in any way will benefit everyone. So again, thanks for looking at this, and hopefully you will support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Charlene Liu, followed by Linda Sell. Charlene, you've been unmuted. You have 3 minutes to address the city council.
Thank you. I live in District 1 as well. I would like to speak on Linda Sell's integrity. I knew her, I first met her 25 years ago when I was in the Bay Area. I had just moved here, and I volunteered for a Society of Women Engineers outreach program for high school girls to encourage more girls to join engineering. And when I volunteered, I was assigned, it turns out, to Linda Sell's group, where she was leading a class on how to make FM radios. So I helped her with that. Me and her led this group of high school girls to make FM radios, and the girls were very enthusiastic about that. And I did this a couple of years in a row. That's when I first met her. And this is before we had children. So this attests to, even before Linda had any idea about going into politics, she was already just innately very concerned and helpful to society about trying to improve circumstances for society in general. Then many years later, or a few years later rather, I moved to Sunnyvale and discovered that Linda was my neighbor just a couple blocks away. By then we had young children, and I further got to know her better as our children moved through the same schools. And I observed how she volunteered in schools, raising funds for the district and for the elementary school where we were. And so I just want to say that Linda is of highest integrity. Her values are in the right place, and I fully support her to be on the council. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Linda Sell. Linda, you've been unmuted. You have 3 minutes to address the city council.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members, I am Linda Sell, and I serve on the Housing and Human Services Commission as Vice Chair. However, I am speaking here today on my own behalf in my personal capacity as an individual. I am also the only officially nominated candidate for Sunnyvale City Council District 1 2022. I support whatever the council thinks is best decision for the community on this issue. However, I do support saving funding so that funds can be invested in the best use for the residents of Sunnyvale, regardless of the outcome of the majority decision on this resolution before you today. I will be knocking on doors as the other candidates are doing ahead of the November election. I will ask to participate in all possible candidate forums I can, and meet and greets to make my opinions known. I will be holding regular office hours weekly in District 1, starting this week if anyone contacts me. All this to talk directly and listen to as many Sunnyvale residents in District 1 and beyond. As background, I have lived in Sunnyvale District 1 and volunteered in the district for over 2 decades, organized a community in the last decade. I understand that the residents deserve a high quality of life. Since 2010, I've committed to advocating for a healthier environment, getting more resources for our local public schools, and bringing people together to work towards a better Sunnyvale. As a parent, I help raise funds for our schools to prevent deep cuts, maintain quality instruction, and keep our neighborhoods desirable. As a nonprofit board member, I've co-founded organizations that advocated for and achieve cleaner air and organized hundreds of students leading on climate action. As a Sunnyvale Housing and Human Services Vice Chair, I've stood up for the residents and collaborated on plans for housing affordability. And as a city council member representative, I will listen to the residents' concerns and work to deliver results to maintain our public safety, create greener economy, and protect Sunnyvale's quality of life. I will ask other stakeholders in our community to join with Sunnyvale to invest resources to address traffic, housing, and our environment. My website is lindasell.org. If people want to go to that and learn more ways to contact me, more about me, and look to see those supporting my candidacy for Sunnyvale City Council District 1. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Linda. And it doesn't look like we have any council questions, so thank you.
And we have next up is Gail Rubino, followed by Martin Pine. Gail, you've been unmuted and you have 3 minutes to address the City Council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council people. Hi, nice to see you. I had one reservation, and my reservation was the democratic process to me is very important. And I didn't want, irrespective of the funds, I didn't want people to lose their ability to vote. However, once Linda spoke, and Linda is indeed one of the finest people you'll ever meet, high integrity, great person, very thoughtful, very progressive, and takes almost everything into consideration when she makes decisions. I think her effort to continually door knock and to attend every forum. I know Livable Sunnyvale, which I am a member of, is having a forum on September 7th, and Linda is invited and will speak. But I think Linda is aware that all the people in District 1 need to know who she is, and I really admire her efforts to continue to campaign, even though she will be, I hope, selected as our next council person from District 1. That's all I have to say. I yield my time. Thank you very much, and everybody stay safe.
Thank you, Gail.
Next up is Martin Pine. Martin, you've been unmuted and you have 3 minutes to address the City Council.
Hi, Martin Pine speaking here solely on my own behalf. I would have, regardless of the funds, I'd have some significant concerns about the appointment if we didn't have the direct mayoral election. I think it is, even in an unopposed, even when we have a great unopposed candidate like Linda Sell, I do think there are some concerns about not having citizens being able to have a voice, to be able to just cast that vote for who they want to be in their city council. However, I do think a lot of my concerns of that are assuaged by the fact that if you are a resident in District 1, and for anyone who doesn't know, I'm in District 5, we have a contested election. So it's not an issue for me. So this is not something I personally have to deal with. But every resident of the city got a chance to for a voice in the mayoral election in 2020. So I don't think we have, given that we don't have to worry about a scenario where if you're a voter in D1, you would have a gap between 2018 and potentially 2026 in when you would have any actual voter say in the city council. I don't see a problem in this. I don't see a democratic legitimacy problem in the city council doing an appointment tonight.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, that was the final public speaker on this agenda.
Okay, I will go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back to council for additional questions or a motion. Councilmember Hendricks.
Yeah, I have comments I wanted to go ahead and make before somebody made a motion, if that's okay.
Go right ahead.
Yeah, so first off, I'm in support of appointing in lieu the person for District 1. But I do think this is highlighting an issue with district elections. District elections and the advocates for it talked about how we'd be able to have more people running, and the fact that somebody had been able to do fundraising or they had people that were supporting them. District elections was supposed to get rid of that. So the fact that where I've heard people make comments that here, the reason why Linda's such a good person is because she got all this support and she had all this fundraising so that other people decided not to run. To me, that's an antithesis of what was supposed to happen with district election. I don't have a problem with Linda as a candidate or as being on the council, but just from a process perspective, this does not seem to be the way we wanted district elections to go. I'm very disappointed in the residents of District 1. I live in District 1. I tried to get multiple people to go ahead and run, and for a variety of reasons, people didn't want to. As a voter in District 1, I'm sad that we don't get to vote. And I disagree with the last speaker. Each resident of Sunnyvale has gone from being able to vote every year or every other year and be able to pick 7 different people. Now we only get to pick, 2 in each individual district, the district and the mayor. So I think there's a challenge, and we need to be thinking about how this reflects on district elections. I don't view this as the council appointing Linda into District 1. This is really the residents of District 1. They made the decision because other people decided not to run. And this is state law. This is not city ordinances that we're going ahead and doing this. I'm very encouraged by Linda's comments that she wants to continue campaign and get out and reach and contact with the voters in the district and wants to participate in the different forums. You know, my colleagues here, we've all run campaigns, and being able to knock on doors and talk to residents and hear feedback, that's actually really important in the decisions you make down the road, because, you know, a large public hearing might be 20 people. There's 158,000 people in the city. So it's really important, you know, to get what residents think, because we don't always get it on the individual items. For me, this is not as much about that we're going to save about $20,000. I think that's important, but we didn't have a problem. Larry, you know all about this. We spent $775,000 to do an election we shouldn't have done. So, you know, 775 and 20,000, money's not the real issue. The real fact here is no one else decided to run. There's only one appointed candidate for what goes on. And as much as I've gotten different emails from people about, well, what if write-in ballots happen? I just don't envision, or I can't see a scenario where a significant number of people are going to write in the same name without somebody running a campaign to use that person's name. And a campaign like that would run into other FPPC rules of what people need to do. So I think this is state law. This is logical for us to do. There's no other candidate. There's no reason to prolong or deal with this and make something go onto the ballot. I didn't ask the question before, but I think there have been prior elections. The last one I can think of is Dave Whittam, where there was only one write-in or one person on the ballot. The city council didn't decide to do this. I don't know why. And I don't think it's a factor in this particular case for what goes on. So I think we should just go ahead and if it gets to the point, I'll make a motion or somebody else can, but I would support moving ahead with Linda in this appointment in lieu. And I think it's really important to distinguish this appointment process is different than other appointment processes that we've done, because this is not a case of where the council chose who was going to be the candidate to fill the council seat. It was really something was done by the residents of District 1 or not done by the residents of District 1. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Spitaleri.
I was ready to make a motion, but I'll wait till other people have spoken.
Okay, thank you. Vice Mayor Cisneros.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to give a couple comments and, you know, of course, other folks, and then be happy to hear the motion. I've had a lot of thoughts about this and talked to a lot of people, because I do think this is a very serious matter when it comes to our democratic process, and it's kind of a unique situation. You know, when I approached this, though, ultimately, I looked at this as I wanted Linda to go ahead and make the decision about how to proceed with her campaign, because that will really, you know, impact her relationship with her district. And if she is to lead in that district, this is the first of many big decisions she would need to make as a council member. You know, as long as her rationale was sound and she had those plans to go ahead and engage with her community, and she brought them up. And as someone who's been as civically engaged as Linda, I do not doubt that she will carry that forward and engage with her constituents in a way that is not, you know, does not undermine her connection to them. So I'm satisfied by that, but I'd also like to address the concerns about whether or not this is a failure of the district election process. Now, in the last district election process, the district elections did basically exactly what they set out to do. It drew in candidates who were not repeat players in the Sunnyvale political circles. It generated greater opportunity for diverse candidates to be successful in their campaigns or to even consider running for office. And in fact, this is happening in both of the other district elections. You know, you're not going to get this in an at-large election just because the pool is bigger. But in my mind, if this is a failure of anything, it's a failure of all of us, myself included, and everyone else involved in our political system to do adequate leadership development and candidate recruitment ahead of time all across the city. The pool of folks who have typically run for office have had very similar backgrounds, or you know, and that world is really small and it can be hard to break into. It can be really intimidating. And so in order to go ahead and develop our leadership bench and make that deep and strong, diverse and capable, we're going to have to put more serious effort into doing that, not just in the places, you know, where, you know, people traditionally live who are civically engaged, but all across the city. And so I look at this as a call to action more than anything else. So, and really bringing that into stark relief. And then, of course, to address the write-in candidate, I actually used to study election policy. I thought that's what I wanted to go into. As it turns out, there are no jobs doing that. So I didn't. But the reason why I wanted to give a little clarity, write-in candidates are really a helpful part of democracy for a couple of reasons. But one of the main reasons is the two-party system and how it can be really hard to go make it to the top of the ticket if you're not involved in that kind of machine. This gives candidates who aren't able to reach that level a chance to still compete in that election and get their ideas out there. However, in Sunnyvale, our races are nonpartisan and every single person is given the exact equal opportunity and chance to get on that ballot and run that campaign. And so if somebody was thinking, wow, I think I'm going to do a write-in campaign for Linda, or would have in District 1, at any point in time, I would encourage that person to put it on your calendar when the next election is and jump in that filing paperwork period and getting everything together and going through the process we went through. That's an important part of the reflection and demonstrating commitment to the job you're applying for, which is ultimately one big interview with thousands and thousands of people. And so if Linda's willing to go and interview with those thousands and thousands of people, despite being appointed, I want to let her do that. And that's a decision she's making as a leader, and I respect it. But those were my comments there. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next up is Councilmember Dean.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, my colleagues, for their eloquent points. You know, the way that I'm looking at this, the voters of D1 made a decision. You know, I think we already heard one of my colleagues mention it that way, and I think that's a framework I agree with. Regardless of what we do tonight, Linda will be taking office come January. And so when I think about that, really the decision that we're making is, are we spending taxpayer money in the best interest of our residents and taxpayers? And for that reason, I feel very comfortable moving forward with an appointment or appointment in lieu, regardless of the nomenclature. And thankfully, I think this decision is made all the easier by the fact that Linda is such an incredible, upstanding, and unimpeachable member of our community. You know, she has such a long track record of involvement. And it's clear that she's dedicated to that, because she's even said and expressed how she's going to continue to door knock, to do all the things that go into this process, because it's such an integral part of building that connection with the community that we all have when we take office. And, you know, one other thing that I think about that we've talked about on this dais a lot together is how when you're a district representative, you're not here on the dais just to make choices for your district. You're representing the whole city, and you need to think that way about the decisions. And Linda has shown that, because in her advocacy, well in advance of running or deciding to throw her hat in the ring, she's done everything from fighting for schools and children to even mobile home residents that are located way to the north of where she is. And it's just that kind of dedication to people across our city that makes it so easy to decide. So that's where I'm falling on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Larson.
Thank you. So I'll share my thinking as well. And I'll just start by saying I support appointing Linda Sell tonight to the position. Some of the things that I'm not considering in making that decision, one is her qualifications. I do happen to agree she's a very qualified candidate. And for me, that's not the reason to go ahead tonight with doing an appointment. I'm actually more interested in having an open and democratic process. And so saving money is also, especially $20,000, which is, it's something, but it's a fairly modest sum on the scale of things that council works with. So saving that money to me is not a compelling reason to go one way or the other tonight. If I thought that if I had heard of an eager write-in candidate who was already starting to mount a campaign and was more than just a theoretical possibility, then I think democracy would be served by holding the election and allowing that write-in candidate the opportunity to campaign for the seat. But no one has stepped forward. I've not heard anyone. And if they were interested in being a write-in candidate at this point, I think they could have pulled papers 2 weeks ago and gone through the process very easily. And it would be much easier than trying to mount a write-in candidate campaign. So given that, I think that putting this on the ballot would be a theoretical exercise. I'm glad to hear Linda say that she's going to go out and knock on doors and participate in candidate forums as much as she can, and even hold office hours. I think that's wonderful because it is a very important part of the process. But I'll also point out that if we put this race on the ballot, someone other than Linda may just decide, you know what? I got this in the bag and not even bother to knock on doors. Just because it's on the ballot doesn't mean that someone is necessarily going to do the work if they're the only candidate on the ballot. So, like I said, I think it's great that she's going to do that. I'm all for that. I think it makes someone a much better council member, and it's actually not a factor in my decision tonight. I also looked at precedent because, as some people have pointed out, when Dave Whittam was running for re-election, his race was put on the ballot, even though he was the only candidate. So we do have that precedent. However, we also have many school districts and community college districts around here who have uncontested races and will not be on the ballot. In fact, I think that's very, very common in this area, to not be on the ballot if there's only one candidate for one seat, or the same number of candidates as there are seats. So there's not if there's any precedent, I think the precedent actually leans more towards appointing. But there could be arguments either way, I'll acknowledge. But taking all that into consideration, I'm supportive of appointing Linda tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councilmember Spitaleri, to your motion.
Yes, I move adoption of resolution appointing Linda Sell to the City Council, represent Council District 1 for the full term of 4 years beginning in 2023 in lieu of an election, and canceling the November 8, 2022 general municipal election for the City Council member Council District 1 pursuant to California Election Code Section 10229.
Thank you. Councilmember Larson.
I will second that motion, and I just want to confirm that the motion also includes the last part of staff recommendation directing the city clerk not to accept any filing statements for write-in candidates.
So be it.
Good. I mean, I don't see how we could accept that if there's not going to be an election, but just wanted to be clear. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Spitaleri, to your motion.
Yes, it's an honor and a privilege for me to support this motion. I personally think that Linda, let me back up a little bit. I was concerned for a while because I hadn't heard any noise in District 1 of anyone running. But then I started to hear the slow drum beat until it turned into a big orchestra. And I realized that Linda was out throughout the entire community, letting people know her interest and her dedication and why she wanted to be on the council. After meeting Linda and talking with her and understanding and knowing of her background, I feel as a resident of District 1, I will have a great representative on the city council come January. And when I become Joe citizen again, and I'll be looking for my council member to represent not only our district, but all the districts. And I feel very confident that she'll do an excellent job. As far as other people getting in the race, there was no secret in District 1 that Linda was running. If you look at all the social media outlets and everything like that, and those who take interest in our city and political process, the ones in the know, they know what's going on in the district. And I don't know if we failed or the council failed in recruiting anyone in these districts. I think that's going to be seen in the future. But those who are active in the districts and get their name out there, they're the ones who are going to be the front runners either on commissions or council. So I feel that the district elections will work. I think those going into those districts understand that I represent all the city, but I know I'll go to sleep after January every night knowing I have a great representative that I can call and talk to if I have issues in my district. So Linda, I wish you all the best in the world, and I support you wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councilmember Melton.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Klein. This is the first time at this public hearing where I've turned on my microphone and I can see which way the tide is going. So I just decided to hold back on making my comments. I'm not going to be supporting the motion. I think alternative 2 is a better way to go for the long-term future of Sunnyvale. And there are a whole bunch of considerations to put into play here. First is the cost. $20,000 is not insignificant, and every dollar that we can have in the BSF is important. But I think there's a bigger consideration, but also some other things that I didn't really put a lot of weight into. The notion of the possibility of a write-in candidate is so remote that I have to put that to the side. The discussion about how we determine seniority of our council members is something that council can change at any time we want to. So I sort of put that aside. The candidate herself, and I agree with a lot of people. I think Linda's a fantastic candidate, and I know she'll be a great council member. But for the purposes of where I'm trying to come from, which is a long-term view, I put aside our excellent candidate and all of her qualifications for the 2022 decision that we're making. And I'm trying to think like a decade ahead or longer. I appreciate Mr. Carnahan getting to the bottom of appointed incumbent if Linda decides to run for re-election. That was the one question that I had, a sort of a nuance. I heard a member of the public say that if this race was on the ballot, that it would be meaningless. I disagree with that. I heard somebody say that if we put this on the ballot, that it would be theoretical. I disagree with that. I have a real problem with the fact that there's only one candidate that decided to run in District 1. And there are a lot of folks that are, inside baseball and pay a lot of attention to what goes on. And I get all of that. But I think our residents in District 1 need to see the fact that there's only one candidate in their district running for election. They need to see that, and they need to sit up and they need to say, what the heck is going on here? Why is there only one candidate running in District 1? Why don't I have a choice? And to me, the best way to advertise the fact that there's only one candidate running for District 1 is to put it on the ballot. And when candidates are looking at the top of the ballot, in the middle of the ballot, at the bottom of the ballot, in District 1, they're going to see, okay, my city council member for District 1, Linda Sell, they'll probably have good thoughts about Linda, but I want to have a reaction in District 1 of what's going on here? Why is there only one candidate? And the inside baseball folks will know why there's only one candidate, but I want people to become engaged and ask what is going on here by seeing only one person on the ballot. And if that sparks 10 people in District 1 to want to get involved and want to do leadership Sunnyvale or want to figure out how to become more involved, then I think that would be a good thing. So that's the reason I think alternative 2 is a better course of action. Is I want maximum exposure to the fact that there's only one candidate on the ballot. And I'll just say, for the sake of clarity, this is not about the candidate herself. I think she's a great candidate. So Linda, nothing personal. I'm just trying to do a longer play here for the city of Sunnyvale. So I'll be voting no. And I understand where this motion is going to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Hendricks.
Yeah, thank you. So first off, I want to associate myself with Councilmember Larson's comments and what he made earlier about how this is going. A comment was made about, a failure or not of being able to try and get more people to try and run. I'm not going to do it here in this public hearing, but if anybody wants to call me, I'd be happy to talk about why people have decided not to run for Sunnyvale Council. And what are the factors that I heard from people for why they didn't run. And there are multiple that I spoke to that would have been good candidates. Whether they have one or not, it's a different story. I want to remind everybody in the city that with district elections, a district elects an individual to represent that district, but they vote and they do things across for the entire city. And so I would encourage residents, when they have topics that they want to reach out to members of the council about, don't reach out to your individual council or district representative. Reach out to council@sunnyvale.ca.gov. Let all of your council members know, and the mayor and city staff, what it is your concern. Because just talking to one individual council member, that doesn't get you 4 votes for whatever your issue and concern is. And that everybody on the council here, regardless of whether or not, a couple of us are still at large, the mayors for the whole city or district, everybody here, when we make votes, is for the entire city. So as residents, if you have concern, reach out to council@sunnyvale.ca.gov to go ahead and let the entire council know what's going on. And then I'm going to go ahead and close, and I'm going to go back to my concerns with district elections. And it was mentioned about the prior election we had and the current election we had. And I have no concerns at all with the Vice Mayor Cisneros or Councilmember Dean being elected as part of what's going on. But I've said for a long time, people from that first one cycle of a district election said, oh, it's a success. Nobody would have said it was a success if 2 old white guys had gotten elected in that scenario. And both Vice Mayor Cisneros and Councilmember Dean both raised enough money and were very qualified, very eloquent speakers who went ahead and could have won a citywide election. Yes, I'm one of those inside baseball people about elections here in Sunnyvale that Connection knows the difference. They would have won whether it was a district election or citywide election for what went on because of the way they ran their campaign and the structure and effort that they put into that process. We don't have that same thing going on right now with this election cycle, whether it's District 1 or the rest of it. There's not diversity of what goes on of political views between different candidates. There's not a debate that's going on about the direction of the city. Should we go this way or should we go that way? I think people really need to step back and go, here is our district elections. Are they achieving the actual results that we wanted to achieve and that people talked about that we are going to achieve for what goes on? Again, that's district elections in general. I think that, as I said before, the members of District 1 made a decision in whether or not they wanted to run for office. And it has nothing to do with whether or not, it shouldn't have had anything to do with whether or not Linda, got a lot of support to begin with, or she did a lot of fundraising or anything else, because those elements were things that going to district elections were supposed to mitigate. We're supposed to mitigate. So I'm disappointed that District 1 doesn't get a vote. I don't get a vote this year. I didn't get a vote for council member last year, or 2 cycles ago, or cycle ago. I have to vote for the mayor. And it's going to be 4 more years before I get to vote again as a district member. But I think this is the right thing to do because no one else has raised their hand to run. And there's no point in going ahead and making everyone go through the effort that is not going to change the outcome. So I hope we can all vote. Maybe even, Councilmember Melton will change his mind. I doubt it. So it could be unanimous, but it doesn't make a difference. All we need is 4 votes. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll be supporting this motion. As the Vice Mayor said, this is a very unique situation. And first, I just want to thank the city clerk, the city manager, the city attorney for bringing this forward. Our job as council is to look at other income sources, other ways to save the city money, and conceivably this is one of those ways that we'll be voting for. It's $20,000, but $20,000 is $20,000 that can be used elsewhere. From my standpoint, I will disagree one thing with Councilmember Hendricks. It is not an impossibility that a write-in candidate can win. It has happened in the past. Not here, but it has happened in other cities, and could have conceivably happened. That being said, I think that council is conceivably going to make the right decision tonight. It's when you start looking at the November ballot, the down ballot of district elections, we always see drop-offs as far as who even votes at the district level. Even if we only had one name on the ballot, a lot of people wouldn't even have paid attention at that point to vote for their district council member. As sorry as it is to say that there are a lot of people that are uninformed or only vote on certain higher level issues, or basically pick through and just kind of ignore certain things. But the biggest thing tonight for me was, having Linda actually speak in front of us and saying that because she's committed to doing the work. And that to me is really important as far as, whether or not we appoint tonight, or whether or not we went to a November election and her name was the only one on that ballot. It's making sure that she was going to walk districts, knock on doors, basically go to candidate forums, and I applaud her for already considering to do office hours. I do think that it's a great way to meet the residents, especially in her district. I've been doing it now for coming up 6 years next month, and it is a fantastic way to continue to meet with your constituents. So from my standpoint, I think as the public has said tonight, they're in favor of council doing this. I do think that, I wish, as much as I like Linda as a candidate, I do wish that there was another candidate conceivably in that district, but it is a strong candidate, and I can understand why someone conceivably didn't want to run, didn't want to go through the process when conceivably they are going to lose the election, because Linda was a strong candidate. So for what we're doing here tonight is, it's creating a certain amount of burden on Linda to deal with the potential Brown Act for the next 4 months. That being said, I do think that it is the right thing from a city standpoint. I wish, as Councilmember Hendricks had kind of referred to, when we did a special election, or when we're working for a special election 6 years ago, if we'd only had one candidate, things might have been a little bit different. Saving the city $800,000 is even a bigger savings, and we went through a lot of hoops looking at ways. I know council went through a lot of hoops of looking for ways to try to not do that election also. But that's water long under the bridge at this point. And I do think that what we're planning to do here tonight is important from a city standpoint. We need to have a variety of voters from different districts, and sometimes you won't have, you only have a single voter that kind of rises to the top. And so this is conceivably part of the process. I think, council should do whatever they can to save the city money. And, I think ultimately this $20,000 can be spent elsewhere, and we'll still see, residents will still meet their candidate. It will still meet their D1 candidate. And as far as the seniority issue, I do think that, that's one of the issues that we'll be discussing during the strategic session. The strategic workshop next year is talking about seniority and talking about, what it means to be a district council member once we have 6 district council members on city council. So I look forward to that discussion. And with that, city clerk, can you please conduct a roll call vote?
First up, Councilmember Dean, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mayor Klein,
Yes.
Councilmember Melton,
No.
Councilmember Hendricks,
Yes.
Councilmember Spitaleri,
Yes.
Councilmember Larson,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Cisneros.
Yes.
The motion carries 6-1 with Councilmember Melton voting no.
Okay, thank you. Let's go ahead and move to adjournment. Thanks. This meeting will be adjourned at 8:06 p.m. I thank everyone who joined us for tonight's evening and for tonight's meeting, and we'll have and hope that everyone has a good evening. Good night.